Did my son want me or my inheritance? I tested him, told him I'd lost everything, and the dining room still smelled like lavender, cleaner, and money. Serena's kind of air, polished and staged. The Sunday roast sat untouched between us, steam curling over silence. Evan finally spoke. Dad, maybe it's time you stopped acting like the hero. I looked up. Come again? Serena didn't wait. He means this. She waved at my firefighter plaques. It's quaint, but the world runs on leverage now, not loyalty. Leverage, I repeated. That what you call family these days. Evan's voice cracked. You always made everything about duty. You never built anything real. I laughed once, sharp. You think a mortgage and hashtags are real? Serena's smile was all steel. We don't need your lectures, Walt. Just your house. People like you hold on too long. The words hit harder than Smoke ever had. I stared at them both and said quietly, then maybe it's time to test what's still standing. I guess 99% of you will hear this, sigh and scroll past, not clicking like or subscribe. Even if it only takes a second, what time is it for you? And where are you listening? The Summit Ridge Country Club had that kind of over-polished charm that made everything smell faintly of lemon polish and old money. Edison bulbs glowed over tables dressed in white linen, every chair occupied by people who laughed a little too precisely. A waiter brushed past me with a tray of mimosas, and for a moment I caught the scent of lavender. Ruth's scent. She used to dab it behind her ears before Sunday Mass, the same way she used to wipe soot from my collar when I came home from night shifts at the firehouse. You did the right thing, she'd whisper. I exhaled. Not today, Ruth. Not here. Evan waved from across the room, seated with Serena and her parents. She looked like she belonged to the place, sleek black hair, a Dior handbag perched next to her like a trophy, a BMW key fob sparkling beside it. Evan stood to hug me, awkwardly. His mother-in-law rose half an inch from her seat, polite but uninvested. His father-in-law, Victor Blackwell, stayed seated, his hands folded like he owned every contract in the county. Dad! You found it okay? Evan asked. GPS still works, I said, setting my jacket over the chair. Not bad for a guy who used to navigate burning buildings without a map. Serena laughed, light and practiced. That's sweet, Walt. All that running into fires. Very vintage. Her voice stretched that last word like taffy, soft but sticky. She stirred her mimosa slowly, not meeting my eyes. These days, she continued, real leverage happens in boardrooms. You know, capital efficiency, scalable impact. I smiled. Smoke doesn't care about leverage. Victor chuckled, leaning back in his chair. Public service is noble, Walt. But nobles don't run the economy. The table laughed lightly, obediently. Even the waiter smiled as he refilled my water glass. Evan's fork hovered midair. He didn't say a word. It wasn't the words that stung. It was the ease, the way they all assumed their world sat higher on the ladder than mine ever could. They looked at my years as a firefighter the way people look at old fire trucks in parades. Sentimental, not necessary. I reached for my Mont Blanc pen and signed the brunch bill before anyone could reach for it. The pen had been Ruth's graduation gift to me when I made captain. She'd told me, "You've earned a tool that leaves a mark without smoke." I slid the receipt toward the edge of the table, noticed the hairline crack running across the frame of a nearby golf photo. The crack shimmered in the light like a small wound no one bothered to fix. That's how it starts, I thought. Not with explosions, with cracks. Dad, Evan said softly, you don't have to. It's fine, I said. You've got your own bills. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. The conversation drifted back to vacations and housing markets. Victor spoke about Scottsdale real estate as if it were scripture. Serena scrolled through her phone, laughing quietly at something on Instagram. I stirred my coffee and wondered how long it had been since anyone at that table looked a man in the eye when saying thank you. The smell of lavender lingered again, Ruth, steady, calm. I heard her in the back of my head. Measure before you act, Walt. So I did. I decided I wouldn't speak my disappointment, wouldn't correct their sense of hierarchy. Not yet. Instead, I'd measure, watch, test. Because sometimes you don't really know who's sitting across from you until the lights flicker out. That night, I looked over my aunt's estate paperwork, $5 million, neatly typed, waiting for a signature to finalize distribution. I held the pen over the dotted line. Then I set it down. So that night, instead of changing my will, I changed my plan. The house was quiet that night, too quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like it's waiting for something. CNN murmured from the living room, one of those late-night anchors reciting numbers that didn't sound like news anymore. I stood in the kitchen, the clock over the stove blinking 10:47, and stared at the obituary section of the Wall Street Journal. My aunt's name sat there, circled in red ink. $5 million. It didn't look real in print. My thumb hovered over my iPhone over Evan's name. I'd made harder calls, maydays, alarms, 911 relays, but somehow this one stuck in my throat. Finally, I pressed it. "Dad?" His voice came through, a little tired, maybe distracted. "Hey, kid. Sorry to call late." No, it's fine. Everything okay?" I paused. "Not really." The words came slower than I expected, heavy. "Some investments I made. Bad timing. I might need a place to stay. Just for a few days until I sort things out." Silence then. "Of course, Dad. Come over. We'll figure it out." There it was. The right answer. The one I wanted to hear. Then buzz. Another message popped up on my screen, this time from Serena. Allergies. No scented detergents. Shoes off. Bring meds list. Owe a guest past $20 divided by day. He blinked. Then another. We'll clear a spot in the guest room. Please confirm ETA. Cleaners there at 8, come after 9. The air in the kitchen shifted cooler somehow. Thinner. I called back. Serena, hi. Just got your texts. Oh, great, she said, her tone bright but brittle like glassware. We just have to keep things organized. Standards help everyone, Walt. Tomorrow at 9, okay? Cleaners finishing up around then. Is that necessary? A pause, then a small laugh. Structure is healthy for everyone. See you tomorrow. Click. The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a long time. CNN's background chatter melting into static. The refrigerator hummed softly. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed, and a dog barked twice before settling again. I reached for the dish towel hanging on the oven handle and found a loose thread near the edge. My fingers wound it tighter and tighter until it snapped. The motion pulled something else loose, an old memory. A rookie fireman, trapped in a stairwell, radioing in that he couldn't breathe. I'd gone in after him, felt the smoke shift, tasted something wrong in the air. Never trust clean air that tastes like smoke. That line stayed with me for decades. And right now, the air around this plan, around that text tasted wrong, too clean. I glanced back at the journal, at my aunt's name, at the neat block of type that had changed everything, then at Ruth's photo on the mantel. She was smiling, chin tilted, her favorite lavender blouse faintly visible even in black and white. I whispered to her, the way I used to after bad shifts. One more drill. Oh. I walked through the house, checking locks out of habit. Each click sounded sharper than the last. $5 million waiting in a trust. A son who said, "Of course," and a daughter-in-law who sent instructions like a property manager prepping a rental. The plan was working before it even started. I slipped my Omega watch into my pocket, turned off the TV, and let the dark settle in. 9 a.m. That's when I'd find out what kind of home my son really ran and what kind of people lived inside it. 9. 2 bags, 1 door. At 9 on the dot, I carried 2 bags to my son's door and nearly dropped both when it opened. The ring chime sang twice before the door opened. Serena stood there in yoga pants and a silk blouse, hair pulled tight, smile tighter. Behind her, the house smelled like lemon and something electronic, fresh paint, plug-in diffusers, success. "Walt, you made it." She didn't move aside immediately, just stood there long enough for me to notice the clipboard tucked under her arm. Evan appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. "Hey, Dad, need help with your bags?" "I've got them." The place looked different than I remembered, or maybe it wasn't me remembering, it was them erasing. My old oak armchair, the one Ruth used to sit in to watch Jeopardy, was parked by the front window, a price tag dangling from the arm. Next to it, a box labeled Donate. I caught a glimpse of the silver frame, our wedding photo. Ruth smiling, the sky behind us dark and wild. "That box?" I asked. "Oh." Serena stepped closer, flipping through the clipboard. "We were decluttering. The frame can be repurposed. Sustainable, right? Right, I said. Sustainable. The clock on the wall was one of those minimalist ones, no numbers, just hands ticking too loudly for how quiet the room was. Tick, tick, tick. The sound got under my skin, like the slow crackle of a roof beam before it gives way. Anyway, Serena said, holding out the clipboard, just a few things to make your stay comfortable. Temporary occupancy agreement. I read the bold title and scanned the bullet points. Daily contribution, $25 to offset utilities. Quiet hours, 9 p.m. 7 a.m. Shared groceries via Venmo, split by item, receipts attached. No Senate detergents. Visitors must be pre-approved. Just so there are no misunderstandings, she added brightly. Evan avoided my eyes, busy rearranging mail on the counter that didn't need rearranging. I ran my thumb along the edge of the clipboard. This is new, I said. Structure helps everyone, she replied. That what this is? Her Cartier bracelet slid down her wrist as she reached for a pen. A thin scratch ran along the gold, catching the light like a nicked firefighter's badge. I wondered if she even noticed it. Probably not. Evan finally looked up. Dad, it's not. We just thought it'd make things simpler. You know, expectations. Sure. I took the pen, signed my name, and deliberately misspelled it. Keegan, not Keegan. Neither of them noticed. Serena smiled, relieved. Perfect. You'll be in the guest room upstairs. We just redid it Scandinavian minimalist. You'll love it. I nodded, pretending to study the papers while my eyes went back to that wedding photo in the box. Ruth had always hated minimalism. Said a house without clutter was a house without history. Looks good, I said. Appreciate the structure. Her phone buzzed some group chat about HOA landscaping, probably, and she walked off mid-sentence. Evan lingered. Dad, she just wants to make it easy for everyone, he said. Of course. He hesitated, then added, You'll see. Once things settle, it'll feel normal. I looked around. Feels like something already settled. He didn't answer. I picked up the clipboard again, studied my own wrong name, and set it neatly back on the counter. The ticking clock followed me down the hall, steady, clinical, unbothered. In my head, I logged it the way I used to log incident reports. Data point 1. Property before people. By dinner, the guest would learn where he slept and what it cost to be family. When I first walked into the house that morning, I thought maybe, just maybe, the rules on the clipboard were the end of it. I could manage a few days of overorganization, a couple of texts about detergent, but by dinner I learned structure wasn't Serena's way of maintaining peace. It was her way of assigning rank. She found me in the kitchen while Evan stirred pasta, her voice sweet as powdered sugar. Walt, small update. My mom's flying in from the Hamptons tonight. She had a cosmetic procedure, just a touch-up, nothing major. She'll be staying in the guest room for a few days. Oh, the guest room, I repeated, though I already knew where this was going. Yes, it's only temporary. She smiled, pressing her Rolex against her wrist like punctuation. You understand. I looked at Evan. He was still stirring, pretending the sauce needed that much attention. Of course, I said. Where would you like me? She hesitated for half a second before saying it, that polite cruelty wrapped in a velvet tone. We set up the couch in the garage. Don't worry, it's spotless. There's a space heater. It's temporary. Temporary. That word again. I followed her down the hallway. She kept the door open behind her, making sure the neighbors across the driveway could see. We all make sacrifices, she said. You'll have privacy and proximity. Perfect balance. The garage smelled like detergent, oil, and faint mildew clean, but not kind. A single extension cord snaked across the floor, coiled like a question no one wanted to answer. Against the wall sat a worn couch I recognized. It used to be in Ruth's sewing room. They'd covered it with a pale throw blanket, trying to make it blend in with the paint cans and folding chairs. I dropped my duffel beside it, next to 3 cans labeled Swiss coffee, a decorator's illusion of white, pretending to be something richer. Evan appeared in the doorway. Dad, it's just for a night. Mom's still sore from her procedure. She'll need quiet. I see, I said. Wouldn't want to disturb the recovery. He ran a hand through his hair, uneasy. You sure you're okay out here? I'm fine. I sat down, the couch springs groaning under the weight of something heavier than me. Serena's voice floated from the hall. Dinner's at 7. Oh, and please don't track dust in. We just redid the floors. The door shut. For a moment, I just listened. the faint hum of the water heater, the ticking of metal as the ductwork cooled. Then, far in the distance, an ambulance siren began steady, rising, fading. Instinctively, I counted. 1, 2, up to 10. Then silence. Old habits never die. They just wait for moments like this. On the shelf, between paint rollers and old pool toys, sat a small cardboard box. I opened it out of curiosity. Inside were family photos, some of me, Ruth, Evan, all without frames. The kind of memories you pack away when you want to look like you've outgrown where you came from. I took off my Omega watch, set it gently beside the paint cans. The metal looked out of place under the fluorescent light like dignity in the wrong room. My phone buzzed. A text from Victor Blackwell. Big gala next week. Bring your best suit, Walt. Let's make it official. I stared at the message until the words blurred. Oficial, I murmured. I looked around the garage again. The couch, the Swiss coffee, the cracked concrete line running straight under my feet like a fault line waiting for the right tremor. I smiled. If they wanted performance, I'd give them a stage. The house looked staged again that evening, like an open house, not a home. A scented candle burned on the marble coffee table, trying too hard to smell like cedar and wealth. The Nest thermostat glowed an even 72 degrees. Controlled comfort. Victor Blackwell sat in my armchair like it was his. His cufflinks flashed when he raised his glass. Serena leaned on the back of the couch, all posture and perfume, nodding at every word he said before he even finished saying it. Evan sat across from me, quiet, thumb tapping the edge of his tumbler, eyes flicking between us like he was refereeing a game he didn't want to play. Walt, Victor began, tone syrup smooth. You're respected. We respect that. Let's put it to work. I waited. He liked build-up, I noticed. The kind of man who enjoyed hearing his own pauses. For scholarships? I asked, pretending interest. Victor smiled wider. For outcomes. He steepled his fingers, the word dripping with strategy. See, my firm's expanding into community partnerships. Your VFW scholarship night? Perfect platform. We blend brands yours, mine, and everyone wins. Everyone, I repeated. Exactly, Serena said, perching on the armrest like a bird trained for applause. Community leverage. Optics. We highlight civic virtue, make philanthropy sexy. People eat that up. The candle flickered, scent thick as sugar. Evan cleared his throat. Dad, it could help. The scholarship could grow. More exposure. More funds. I nodded slowly, watching him. My son. My flesh and blood. Fluent now in the same corporate dialect that turned integrity into marketing copy. Optics first, Victor said again, lifting his glass. Outcomes follow. I took a sip of coffee cold from the afternoon, bitter on my tongue. My reflection wavered in the cup's surface. A flash memory cut through the thrift store suit a kid once wore at scholarship night, too short in the sleeves, nervous smile wide as the world. He'd hugged me after the ceremony. You kept me out of trouble, Captain. That boy hadn't needed optics. He needed a chance. I blinked the memory away. So, I said evenly, you want me to introduce your firm at my event? Oh. Victor spread his arms. Inspire, connect, lead. You, my friend, are the bridge. And in exchange? Exposure, for both of us. I'll handle the press kit. You just stand there and look authentic. Authentic, Serena chimed in softly. It's a win-win, Walt. You bring the heart, we bring the polish. I noticed a faint water ring on the marble beside her. She kept rubbing at it, round and round, as if persistence could erase evidence. I set my mug down right next to it, letting it leave another ring. She froze for half a second, then smiled too brightly. Well, I said finally, leaning back, I'm flattered. That's quite a vision. Victor's grin widened. So we have your blessing? I met Evan's eyes. His look tired, guilty, hopeful all at once. Sure, I said. Let's do it. Send me the details. Serena exhaled, relieved. Victor raised his glass. Excellent. This is how legacies evolve. I nodded once, slow. Exactly. But as their laughter filled the room, I pulled my phone from my pocket, thumb hovering over my contacts. The commander at the VFW, the union rep, the school principal. Names of people who didn't need optics to stand tall. I smiled, said yes, and started making calls no one could see. I guess 99% of you will hear this, sigh and scroll past, not clicking like or subscribe. Even if it only takes a second. What time is it for you, and where are you listening? The next morning started like every other. Coffee, headlines, silence. But beneath the quiet, the gears had shifted. The air in my den felt charged, like the moment before an alarm goes off, a calm that knows what's coming. I opened my MacBook Air, the WSJ folded beside it, the obituary section still circled from the week before. The house smelled faintly of old paper and fresh grounds, Ruth's kind of morning. Subject line: Temporary Trust Addendum Community Clause. I typed the email to my estate attorney, Carter and Bly, LLP, my cursor steady. Leave the $5M in a revocable trust until after the VFW Scholarship Gala. Insert language prohibiting commercial use of community events or charitable platforms. Label as Community Clause. Effective immediately. I read it twice before hitting send. No rage, no vengeance, just routing. I picked up the phone, dialed an old number from memory, the Union Hall. Hall 89, Lou speaking. Lou, it's Walt Keegan. A pause, then warmth. Cap, you still breathing? We were starting to think you went soft. Not yet. Need a favor. Name it. VFW Scholarship Night. No vendors, no sponsorships, no logos. This one's for the kids. Pass it along. Done, he said, no hesitation. That's the thing about a network built on sweat. You don't need contracts. Just trust and history. Next, I texted Commander Holt at the VFW. Need revised run of show. Cut the corporate pitches. Spotlight the cadet's mom front row. She works nights. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji, and 2 minutes later, good call, Cap. About time we go back to basics. I smiled. Basics, that's what everyone forgot when they started chasing optics. A call came in from the high school principal, returning mine. Mr. Keegan, you mentioned wanting to highlight one of our cadets? Yes. Morales. Her mom's a janitor at Street Luke's hospital. I want her recognized first. Of course, that's easy. Oh. Easy. Some things should be. When the calls ended, the house settled into a different kind of quiet, efficient, deliberate. My den looked like a command post again. Notes everywhere, but not messy. Just ordered. I flipped open an old legal pad and scribbled the words from a note Ruth had written years ago, taped once to our refrigerator. Don't lecture. Demonstrate. I underlined. Demonstrate twice. Back when I was captain, we had a saying, don't yell through smoke, move through it. The men followed what you did, not what you said. That principle still worked outside the firehouse. I reached for my phone one more time and drafted a final text. To Evan. Proud of you. Sit with me at VFW. He didn't answer right away. That was fine. Some messages needed time to burn through the fog. Across the room, the wall clock ticked too loudly. I pressed a finger against the glass until it stopped. Silence. Then I let it run again. The world outside my window looked ordinary: delivery trucks, kids on bikes, the hum of life continuing, but inside, the switchboard hummed with quiet power. Calls made, routes rerouted, consequences already in motion. I leaned back in my chair, coffee cooling beside the keyboard, and watched the cursor blink on a blank email draft like a heartbeat, steady, patient. By the time Victor polished his speech, the microphone had already been rewired. The ring chime pinged just after 10. I wasn't expecting anyone. I was halfway through my second cup of decaf and watching the cursor blink on another unsent email when the notification popped up on my phone. Motion detected, front porch. I almost ignored it. Then I saw who it was. The feed opened in the dim, grainy light of the porch camera. Serena. Next to her, Victor, hands in his pockets, posture rehearsed even in the dark. Evan stood a step behind, looking like he wished he could fade into the siding. A moth flitted near the porch bulb, tapping against the glass, wings white as cinders. Serena's voice came clear through the speaker. If he announces the donation with our name attached, it's done. Victor nodded, confidence in motion. He's old school, he respects ceremony, we just need him to say it on mic, on record. Evan spoke then, barely audible. What if he says no? She turned toward him. He won't. He needs us. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Victor clapped him on the shoulder. Son, sometimes good deals don't wait for permission. They walked off, heels clicking against the stone, their voices fading as they reached the driveway. The camera kept recording just the porch light, the empty chairs, and that single moth circling the bulb until it vanished into the dark. I sat there, phone still in my hand, watching the replay twice. Then I hit download. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just awake. I named the file, if required. Not when needed, not evidence, just if required. Outside my window, the street was hushed except for the faint thud of newspapers landing 2 doors down, small sounds that mean life's still ordinary somewhere. Inside, the world tilted. For a few seconds I stared at the glow of the Ring app. The thumbnail of their faces paused mid-conspiracy. The grainy freeze frame of modern betrayal. My thumb hovered over the delete button. I almost pressed it. I didn't want to become a man who kept proof. But this wasn't about spite. It was about clarity. I opened my email again, this time to Commander Holt. Seat the cadet's mom front row. Don't mention sponsors. Focus on service, not funding. Sent. Then another text to my attorney. Leave the trust untouched until Monday. Pending outcome. Outcome. Another word for reckoning. I leaned back, the room dim except for the desk lamp. The air was still. The clock ticked. The moth outside tapped the glass again, desperate for light it didn't understand. I watched it until it disappeared. In my mind, I drifted back years to a mill fire, the night the sky looked like gold dust falling sideways. We'd stood under stadium lights after the last flare-out, ash swirling like snow. I remembered thinking how something burned could still look beautiful as it fell apart. That's what I saw now. Beauty. Danger. The way things drift. I closed the laptop and reached for my Mont Blanc, slipping it into my jacket pocket. The same one Ruth gave me when I made captain. You'll need this for when words matter, she'd said. Tomorrow, words would matter again. The house hummed, quiet, expectant. I shut off the lamp, and for a moment the only light was the porch bulb outside, glowing like a small, tired truth. Morning would smell like coffee and confidence, and then microphones. The parking lot was already full when I arrived. Pickup trucks, sedans, a couple of dusty minivans lined up under the single flickering streetlight. Inside, the VFW hall smelled like chili, waxed floors, and old wood paneling. Folding tables lined the walls, each with a crock-pot plugged into a power strip that hummed faintly under the patriotic bunting. A banner hung behind the stage. VFW Post 317, honoring service, building tomorrow. Victor Blackwell adjusted his cufflinks like he was walking into a televised press conference. Serena smoothed her dress, whispering to Evan about photo angles. The ceiling fan above them turned lazily, one blade hitting the air with an uneven thwop. Thwop, thwop. I watched the crowd, veterans in worn jackets, union guys still smelling faintly of work, proud parents, and a few teenagers in dress uniforms. These were my people. They didn't wear polish. They wore proof. Victor shook hands with a councilman, passing out business cards as though charity had a mailing list. His voice carried across the room. We're blending civic values with modern partnership, he said to anyone within earshot. When the program started, I took the podium first. Victor stood just behind me, holding his stack of speech cards, ready to deliver his vision. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, tonight's about one simple thing, those who run toward the fire, and those who wait at home hoping they'll make it back. I saw Victor's grin tighten. He leaned toward the mic. On behalf of... I stepped forward gently, hand raised. Before anything else, I'd like to start with someone who reminds us why we're here. Cadet Morales, front and center. There was a small gasp, then applause. The girl looked stunned. She walked up, uniform crisp, but shoes worn at the edges. Her mother followed hesitantly, wiping her hands on her apron. Cadet Morales, I said, your essay about your mother working nights at the hospital, well, we thought people should hear from you directly. Her voice trembled at first, then steadied. My mom says heroes don't brag. They just show up. That's what I want to be. The room broke into applause. Someone shouted, That's right! A few phones came up, recording. I glanced at Serena, whose face was set in a frozen smile. She leaned toward Evan. What is he doing? She whispered, sharp as glass. After the cadet finished, I took the mic again. And while we're thanking those who show up, I said, our local credit union. Sitting right there in the back, they've covered application fees for every kid who dared to apply this year. That's community. Heads turned. The manager, startled, waved shyly. Applause rose again, longer this time. I let the moment breathe. Ruth's voice drifted through my memory. Don't lecture. Demonstrate. So I did. I didn't look at Victor. I didn't have to. His speech cards drooped in his hand, unread, irrelevant. Serena's eyes darted between cameras, searching for the right frame that no longer existed. Evan's expression changed slowly, like something thawing. When the applause died down, I simply said, "Thank you for believing that action speaks louder than branding." Phones kept rolling. Not one of them was pointed at Victor. By the time we wrapped, the room felt lighter, like a fire that burned clean. Victor stood, still clapping, his grin fixed but hollow. Serena's hand tightened around her glass. Evan hesitated before finally joining the applause, small and late. As I stepped off stage, a veteran patted my shoulder. "Good show, Cap," he said. "Felt like the old days." I smiled. Old days weren't so bad. When Victor realized the night had moved on without him, he suggested another stage, their country club gala, where he promised everything would finally be done right. Ugh. The Summit Ridge Country Club looked like it had been scrubbed of imperfection. The marble floors reflected the chandeliers like a second sky, every crystal dangling with purpose. A string quartet played near the staircase, music elegant enough to make silence seem uncivilized. I arrived in a charcoal suit Ruth had once picked out for me. The one she said made me look too serious for small talk. Tonight, seriousness was the point. The crowd buzzed with practiced laughter. That particular brand of mirth you hear only at places where the wine's been pre-selected and the jokes are safe. Waiters drifted through the glow with trays of canapes that looked engineered, not cooked. Victor Blackwell owned the room before he even took the stage. His Rolex flashed under the lights as he lifted the mic. Serena stood near him, radiant in Dior, her hair sculpted to perfection. Evan lingered behind them, posture stiff, face pale under the overhead glow. Victor's voice rolled out, polished and confident. "Tonight," he said, pausing like a man timing applause, "we honor real heroes, those who invest in our future." The audience nodded, clinking glasses. He turned toward me with that corporate smile. "Walt Keegan," he continued, "a true man of service and integrity. He's agreed to join our initiative to bring old-fashioned heroism into modern investment. Because legacy, ladies and gentlemen, needs leverage." Applause. Cameras flashed. Serena slipped her hand into Evan's arm, squeezing. "Dad," Evan whispered, leaning close. "Just say a few words about partnership." I looked down at the scotch glass in my hand. The condensation had left a perfect circle on the white linen. A ring, cold and deliberate. I set it aside. "Partnership," I repeated. The word felt foreign. Serena smiled too brightly. "Don't make this difficult, Walt." "Oh." Her voice was soft, but her eyes dared me. I reached into my jacket pocket and felt the shape of my phone, the folder I'd labeled, if required, waiting quietly in its corner of memory. I didn't need to play it. Just knowing it existed steadied my pulse. Victor gestured toward me. "Captain Keegan, would you honor us with a few words?" I rose slowly. The tuxedoed crowd shifted their attention like synchronized machinery. Walking to the microphone, I caught Evan's reflection in a silver serving tray, his face caught between hope and fear. Serena's expression, by contrast, was serene, confident. She thought she'd already won. The stage lights were blinding, warm against my collar. "Thank you," I began, voice even. "I've been asked to speak about partnership. It's a fine word, means a lot of things to a lot of people." A waiter stopped mid-step. The quartet's notes softened. I looked at the chandeliers, at the crowd of polished faces, waiting to be affirmed in their own goodness. "When I was a fire captain," I said, "we had a rule. If it feels wrong, call it out before it spreads. You don't wait for the smoke to clear. You don't pretend it's just steam." Serena's smile faltered, the corners stiffening. Victor's fingers tightened on his champagne flute. I kept my tone polite, almost warm. Partnership isn't about attaching your name to someone else's work. It's about standing beside the people who do the work when no one's watching. A ripple of murmurs moved through the tables. Someone coughed. I saw Evan lower his head. shoulders shaking once. Maybe a laugh, maybe a breath of relief. I smiled. So tonight I'll keep my words short. The heroes we're honoring already spoke loud enough with their lives. Applause began hesitant, then full. Victor stood still. Serena clapped once, slow and brittle. The moment my fingers brushed the microphone, every chandelier seemed to go still. For a moment after my last sentence, the ballroom hung in silence. You could hear the chandeliers hum with the weight of their own light. Victor stepped toward me, all charm and confusion, his voice smooth but trembling at the edges. "Beautiful words, Walt," he said, laughing lightly. "But you forgot the most important part, the donation. Shall we make it official?" Every eye turned toward me. Serena's hand rested on Evan's arm, nails pressed just enough to remind him who controlled the narrative. I nodded. "You're right, Victor. Let's make it official." I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out my phone, and held it up. I was raised to believe that honesty matters more than comfort. So tonight, before we talk about donations, let's talk about truth. Serena tilted her head, smiling nervously. "Walt, what are you doing?" "Demonstrating," I said. The ballroom's AV system was already paired for the music playlist. One quick tap on my screen, and my phone connected to the speakers. The quartet's soft notes faded. Then came the first voice, Serena's. Clear, unmistakable, projected through the chandeliers. "If he announces the donation with our name attached, it's done." The words hit like a spark in dry grass. A fork clattered onto the marble floor. No one picked it up. Then Victor's voice followed, smoother, colder. "He's old school. He respects ceremony. Just get him to commit on camera." Gasps rippled across the room. Heads turned. Phones lifted, recording. Evan's face went white. He didn't look at me. Didn't look at anyone. Serena rose from her chair, color draining from her skin. "This is out of context," she said, voice high, breaking. Victor stepped forward, his mask cracking. "This is absurd!" "No," I said quietly. "This is honesty." The playback ended. Just the faint hum of the speakers remained, like static after a fire. I looked out at the crowd, businessmen, veterans, teachers, the same faces who had nodded through Victor's speech about investment. Now they were seeing something raw, something real. "I spent 40 years in service," I said, steady but soft. "We had a rule in my house and in my firehouse. You can rebuild after a blaze, but not after a lie. Integrity isn't for sale." No one moved. Then, slowly, one man at the back started clapping. Another followed. Then, a few more. The applause built not loud, not triumphant, but solid, like the sound of something honest being recognized. Victor tried to speak again, but his words drowned under the rising noise. Serena sat down hard, staring at the tablecloth as if it might swallow her. Evan finally stood, shaking his head. He looked at me, and I saw both shame and something else, maybe the first trace of understanding. I turned the mic off, pocketed my phone, and stepped away. As I passed Serena, she whispered, "You've ruined us." "No," I said. "You did that the moment you confused legacy with leverage." Victor stormed out first, his entourage trailing behind like smoke dispersing. The cameras followed him, but the room's attention didn't. It stayed on Evan, his trembling hands, the way his eyes followed me toward the door. Outside, the night air felt clean. Cold, but clean. Ruth's voice came to me again, soft and steady. "Don't lecture. Demonstrate." I smiled faintly. "I did, Ruth. I did." By the time I left the ballroom, no one was looking at Victor, they were looking at Evan. It didn't take long. By the next morning, the Facebook neighborhood group had already done what no press release could, turned a local gala into a small-town morality play. Someone had uploaded the video, the part where Victor's voice said, "He's old school, he respects ceremony." It looped under captions like, "Not anymore, he doesn't." Comments flooded in by the hundreds. "Captain Keegan always was the real deal." Finally, someone called out those pretenders. Integrity's not dead after all. It spread fast. Too fast for Serena's PR instincts to catch. By noon, Victor's firm released a mutual separation statement. By 3, 2 of his biggest clients pulled their investments. By 5, his phone number was off the company site. At their house, Serena packed boxes, her movements sharp, deliberate. The sound of packing tape tore through the air like punctuation. "He humiliated us," she hissed, slamming a Tiffany bracelet into a drawer. The clasp snapped clean. Evan stood in the doorway, jacket still on from work, looking older than he had the night before. He told the truth, he said quietly. Truth doesn't trend, Evan. Money does. She shoved another box shut. We built something, and he burned it down for an applause. Evan leaned against the wall. Maybe it deserved to burn. Serena froze. For the first time, she didn't have a script ready. Across town, Victor sat in his Lexus, staring at his reflection in the black screen of his phone. The name Walt Keegan was trending locally. His wasn't. By the next morning, he'd gone dark. No statements, no calls, just silence. Meanwhile, I was at Starbucks, the same seat I always took. The barista handed me my cup. Walt? She asked. I nodded, but when I looked down, the cup said, Wald. I almost laughed. The universe's reminder. Fame fades fast, but anonymity is consistent. I opened Facebook. The posts kept rolling in. Photos of the VFW hall, screenshots of Victor's speech frozen mid-smile. Then a new comment appeared under one of the clips, someone I hadn't heard from in years. Tom Reese, an old firefighter buddy. You showed him, Cap. Drinks on me. Like old times. I smiled. Just a little. Justice felt good, but it wasn't warm. I scrolled through more comments. Wish my dad had that kind of backbone. That's the kind of story our kids should see. It hit me then this wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. But reclamation comes with its own kind of loneliness. I watched people typing my story into their timelines, narrating a moment they didn't live, and somewhere between the heart emojis and hashtags, I realized Ruth would have hated the attention. She believed in quiet victories. The door chimed. A stranger in a hard hat nodded at me as he left. Nice work at the VFW, Captain, he said. You did good. I nodded back, not trusting my voice. Outside, the afternoon light slanted through the window, catching the steam from my coffee. For a second, it looked like smoke. Not danger this time, just memory. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Dad, it's me. Evan. I stared at the screen until it stopped buzzing. Then it rang again. Same number. I picked up. Hey, he said, his voice low, careful. Can we talk? The noise had died down online, but guilt has a quieter frequency, and Evan finally called. It was Saturday morning when I heard the car pull up. The sound didn't belong to my street, the engine too new, too careful. I was standing on the porch, halfway through replacing the light bulb over the door. The old one kept flickering like it couldn't decide if the dark deserved one more chance. When I looked down the steps, Evan was there, holding a grocery bag like it was some kind of peace offering. Not flowers, not wine, just a brown paper bag that sagged slightly in the middle. Hey, he said. Hey! We stood there a moment, neither of us moving. I didn't know what you needed, he said finally, lifting the bag. So, eggs, coffee, batteries, some bread. You know, basics. I nodded. Always good to have batteries. He laughed, quick and nervous. You still hate the dark, huh? Never hated it, I said, screwing in the bulb. Just like being ready when it comes. The porch light blinked once, then held steady. He shifted his weight, eyes on the gravel. You really had to test me like that? I looked at him. You really had to fail? He flinched. The silence that followed felt heavier than the bag in his hands. A neighbor's dog barked at a passing Amazon van, breaking the quiet, giving us both a reason to breathe. I didn't mean to, he trailed off. I just thought Serena said, I know what she said. He nodded, swallowing hard. It wasn't just about money, Dad. It was pressure, image, everything we thought mattered. I set the screwdriver down, gestured toward the steps. Sit. We sat side by side, 2 paper coffee cups between us, steam curling upward and disappearing into the air. He rubbed his palms together. You embarrassed us. You embarrassed yourself, I said softly. I just turned on the lights. He exhaled, slow. You could have talked to me first. I did, I said. Every day, in ways you didn't want to hear. That one landed. He looked away, jaw tight. The porch light above us flickered again, then steadied. You know, I said, when you were 10, you used to hold the flashlight when I worked on the car. You'd shake so bad the light would dance all over the engine. I'd say, steady, Evan, light where it matters. He gave a small smile. Yeah, I remember. You yelled a lot. I was teaching. He nodded. You still are. We sat there a while, neither of us rushing the moment. The kind of stillness that doesn't need filling. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "Not just for the gala, for letting people tell me what was worth respecting." I looked at him carefully. "That's a start." He nodded. "I don't know how to fix it." "Character isn't built when it's easy," I said. "It's built when it's ugly." He winced, but he didn't argue. The light above us buzzed once, then held strong, washing the porch in a soft, steady glow. "I should go," he said, standing. "Serena's staying with her sister. I need some time to figure things out." "Time's good," I said. "Use it." He placed the grocery bag beside the door. "You'll need milk soon." "I'll manage." He hesitated, then walked to the car. The engine started, but he didn't drive off right away. He just sat there, maybe remembering something, maybe nothing. When he finally left, the taillights faded down the street. He left with the groceries. I kept the silence. It was nearly a month before anything arrived, long enough for the noise to fade, for the neighborhood gossip to move on to new scandals, missing packages, a raccoon in someone's attic. The mail came late that Friday, dropped through the slot with a soft thud. A small envelope, no return address. I almost tossed it with the circulars, but my name, Walt Keegan, was written in Evan's handwriting, the same uneven scrawl he'd had since grade school. I carried it to the kitchen, set it on the counter beside my half-empty coffee mug. The cup left a ring stain on the wood, bleeding into the corner of the envelope like a watermark. Inside was a single check, $50,000, made out to the Fire Cadet Scholarship Fund. Beneath the memo line, 2 words, "In Mom's name." I stood there for a long time, staring at the handwriting. The kitchen clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a lawnmower droned faintly somewhere down the street. I turned the check over in my hands, reading it again. It wasn't the amount, it was the signature. Evans. Clean, deliberate. For the first time in a long while, my chest hurt in a way that wasn't anger. I picked up the phone and called. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, Dad." "Got your mail," I said. "I figured you would." I traced the corner of the envelope, the edge still damp from the coffee ring. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," he said. "It's not about guilt." "What's it about then?" He hesitated. I could hear traffic in the background, a turn signal clicking faintly. "It's about cleaning up," he said finally. "Making right what got messy." I let out a small breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Good," I said. "Keep scrubbing." He laughed softly. "That's about as close to a compliment as I'm gonna get, huh? Don't push your luck." We sat in silence for a moment. An easy one this time. As I held the check, a memory crept in without warning. Ruth, sitting at the kitchen table years ago, sewing badge patches on Evan's scout uniform. He was 8, maybe 9. His small hands tried to help, clumsy but determined. He'd threaded the needle wrong, stabbed his finger, and cried until she kissed it better. She looked at me then and said, "He just wants to do something that matters." I hadn't thought of that moment in years. Now, standing alone in the same kitchen, I realized he still did. "Evan," I said quietly, "your mom would have liked this." "I hope so," he said. "I didn't want it to feel like some big redemption arc or whatever, just real." "It is," I said. Another pause. Then, almost shyly, he added, "You'll be at the scholarship night next month, right?" "I never miss it." "Good. Maybe you could come early this time, help set up." I smiled. "You planning to hold the flashlight steady this time?" He chuckled. "Trying to?" The sound made something settle in me. When we hung up, I slid the check back into the envelope and set it beside Ruth's photo on the mantel. The light from the window caught the ink, turning the words, "In Mom's name," into a faint silver shimmer. He didn't ask if I was proud. He just said, "See you Sunday." Oh, it had been years since I'd set 2 plates at the table. The second one used to belong to Ruth. Lately, it just sat there out of habit, more placeholder than hope. At 6 sharp, a car door closed outside. Then came the familiar shuffle of hesitation, someone standing at the porch steps, debating whether to knock or just turn back. The knock came anyway. When I opened the door, Evan stood there, a slow grin forming as he lifted a dented pot. Steam escaped from under the lid. "Didn't trust takeout," he said. "So I tried chili." I raised an eyebrow. "Tried or succeeded?" "We'll find out," he said, stepping inside. The house smelled different almost immediately. tomatoes, cumin, and something faintly smoky, like the old firehouse kitchen used to on winter nights. He ladled the chili into two mismatched bowls, taking care not to spill. We sat across from each other, the silence filling the space first. He stirred his bowl too much, stalling. Finally, he said, "I used to think winning meant being like them. Turns out it means showing up." I reached for the salt shaker, added a pinch to my bowl. "Showing up's a start," I said. He smiled faintly. "You're consistent, I'll give you that." The fridge motor kicked on, a low hum under the clink of spoons. For a few minutes we just ate. The chili wasn't bad, too many beans, not enough heat, but it was warm, honest. "You still visit the memorial wall?" he asked. "Every spring," I said. "They added 2 names last year, both rookies." He nodded, eyes on his bowl. "I remember when you took me there the first time. I thought it was just a list of heroes. I didn't get that it was a list of promises." I looked at him then, really looked. The defensiveness was gone. The polished edges he'd borrowed from Serena had dulled down to something real. "She's not coming back," he said suddenly, voice small. "Serena, I signed the papers. I figured," I said. "No speech about learning from my mistakes?" "Not tonight." He nodded again, grateful for the mercy. We finished the chili. He burned the toast, forgot to set a timer. When the smoke alarm chirped once, we both laughed, too loudly for the small room. The kind of laugh that didn't erase pain, but put a little space between it and the present. He poured more water into our glasses, careful not to spill. "You ever think Mom would have liked her chili spicier? She'd say it was perfect and sneak in hot sauce when no one was looking." He smiled. "Sounds about right." The air felt different then, not heavy, not light. Just real. After a while he stood. "You need me to take the trash out?" "I've got it." He lingered by the door, hands in his pockets. "You think maybe next week we could cook something together? Not chili. Something edible." "We'll see," I said, but softer this time. He nodded, put on his coat. "See you Sunday?" "Sunday works." He left quietly, closing the door with care. I turned off the lights, carried the empty bowls to the sink. The kitchen still smelled of chili and burnt toast. I wiped the counter, then glanced at the table. 2 chairs pushed in, one still pulled slightly out, the one facing Ruth's photo, propped on the mantel like always. The shadows fell just right, making it look like someone was sitting there, smiling. When he left that night, the chair stayed pulled out as if someone might still be sitting there. The house was quiet again. Sunday's laughter had faded, replaced by the low hum of the heater and the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one Ruth used to iron her lesson plans on, a stack of papers spread before me, bank statements, trust forms, the draft of my will. The pen in my hand was my Mont Blanc, the one Ruth gave me the day I retired. "For writing things that matter," she'd said. It felt right tonight. I took a deep breath and began the letter, not a confession, not a goodbye. More like a manual. "Evan, if you're reading this, it means we've both lived long enough to understand what time does to pride. You've learned that forgiveness and inheritance aren't the same thing. One comes from grace, the other comes from conduct." I paused, staring at the words. The ink pooled slightly where my hand had hesitated. "Legacy isn't about property, Evan, it's about principle. If you stand for the values this family was built on, the door stays open. If not, let the lock do its job." I sat back, letting the sentence settle. It wasn't harsh. It was a truth, tempered by love. On the table beside me sat the estate binder, open to a page labeled Community Clause. I'd kept the clause intact, no beneficiary named until my passing, contingent on service, not surname. Ruth's handwriting peeked out from an old yellow sticky note she'd once attached to a bill. "Don't shout, write." I smiled. She'd said that after every argument, whether it was about Evan's teenage defiance or my stubbornness about letting him grow up on his own. She believed words could soften stone, given time. I was beginning to see her point. I wrote again. "You'll find this letter in the safe, next to your mother's wedding ring. She wore that ring through every fire drill, every hospital scare, every quiet victory. Remember that love isn't the absence of boundaries, it's what gives them shape." The hinge of the safe creaked when I opened it, the faint smell of WD-40 rising as I turned the dial. Inside, Ruth's ring lay in its small velvet box, the gold dulled but not diminished. I placed the envelope beside it, sealing it with a quiet press of my thumb. Not dramatic, not cinematic, Just deliberate. For a while, I sat there listening to the faint ticking of the wall clock, the same rhythm that had marked so many years: Ruth cooking, Evan doing homework, me finishing reports. Life measured not in milestones, but in steady beats. On impulse, I added one last line. When the day comes that you open this, remember, I wasn't guarding money. I was guarding meaning. I signed it simply, Dad. Then I closed the safe door and spun the lock until the sound clicked final. The room felt lighter, though nothing had changed except ink on paper and one man's peace of mind. I poured myself a cup of coffee and stood by the window. The street lights outside glowed against the frost, halos in the dark. Across the street, someone's porch light flickered, then steadied just like mine had weeks ago. Ruth would have liked that, the quiet steadiness of it all. The next time I saw him, it wasn't about money, it was about meaning. I guess 99% of you will hear this, sigh and scroll past, not clicking like or subscribe, even if it only takes a second. What time is it for you, and where are you listening? A year passes quietly, when you're not chasing noise. The world kept spinning new fires, new faces, but some nights still came around like clockwork. The VFW scholarship night was one of them. The same hall, same wooden paneling, same faint smell of floor wax and chili. Even the banner, for those who run toward fire, sagged the same way in the middle. Only this time, Evan wasn't at my side. Not on stage, not at the microphone. He was behind the registration table, stacking certificates, adjusting name tags, making sure the projector cable worked. A volunteer, not a guest of honor. And that was exactly right. I watched him from the back of the room while the crowd filled in: veterans in dress shirts, students in thrift store suits, families clutching phones for photos. No fanfare, no spotlight, just work. At 7 sharp, Commander Willis banged the gavel. Let's bring it home, folks. The room quieted. I took the podium, notes folded neatly in my hand, though I didn't need them. Good evening, I began. A year ago, we gathered in this very hall. We talked about what community means. Some of you remember that night. Some of you are here for the first time. Either way, you belong. A few heads nodded. The old ceiling fan turned lazily overhead, blades wobbling out of sync. I talked about the cadets who'd gone on to college, the small-town donors who'd kept the lights on, the quiet persistence that built every scholarship, every restored life. Then I gestured toward the volunteer table. And tonight, I said, we have someone here who's learned what belonging truly means. The crowd turned. Evan froze mid-motion, a certificate still in his hand. This man isn't here as my son, I continued, but as one of ours. He's put in the hours, no titles, no shortcuts. He showed up, and that's what this place is built on. For a second, no one moved. Then someone in the back started clapping. Then another. Then all of them. The sound filled the hall, folding chairs creaking as people stood. Evan's face flushed crimson. He looked at me across the room, eyes wide, like the kid I used to drop off at scout meetings. He mouthed something, thank you, but didn't step forward. He just went back to handing out certificates, one by one. That was redemption. Not the dramatic kind. The kind that looks like work. When the slideshow started, the lights dimmed. Ruth's photo appeared among the memorial images, her smile steady, her favorite lavender blouse soft under the filter light. The caption read simply, Ruth Keegan, forever part of the crew. I felt the old ache rise, but it wasn't sharp anymore, just warm. I leaned closer to the screen, whispering, we did fine. When it was over, I found Evan stacking chairs with a few of the younger cadets. He saw me coming and straightened, awkward, wiping his palms on his slacks. Good turnout, he said. Best in years, I replied. He nodded, then hesitated. Thanks for letting me back in. I shook my head. You earned your chair. He smiled, and for the first time in a long time it looked unforced. We walked out together. The air outside crisp with early spring. The flag over the building flapped lazily in the night wind, ropes clinking against the pole. At the curb, he turned toward me. You gonna stick around for next year? Wouldn't miss it. He laughed quietly. Guess I'll see you Sunday. Sunday works. We stood there for a moment longer, 2 men framed by the glow of a tired streetlight, before heading off in opposite directions, each certain the other would come back. Legacy isn't a bank account, it's the way the room feels when your name is spoken, and tonight, it felt right.